Break Your Crayons and Draw Outside the Lines. It's the title of a workshop that I did starting about 25 to 30 years ago. And in 1995, I was approached by a publisher saying, oh, you must have a book you want published, which led to the first edition, and of course it's been published several times and now in 4 different languages. It's the theme of this basic program and the additional work I've done since then. So moving on, Broken Crayons, creating thinking inside, outside, alongside, under, over, and with a new or no box at all is how I look at the issue. So often we hear that phrase, thinking out of the box or off the wall. That's only part of it. Many of the times we need to stay inside the box and come up with even better ideas than being outside. The introduction I prefer because I try to give this image of being humble, though Mark went and blew that with all that detail, is the following, just to have some fun. Your speaker today is, and then I give the whole name, as you can see on the slide. Then this is what usually goes on in the audience's mind because I'm not a famous speaker outside of my own family. You see a couple images of me in action or in casual. My full name, as Mark mentioned, I prefer to be called Alan. I want to be a one-name person, but unfortunately I'm not famous enough for that yet. Since 1960 until today here, at this time, I've had at least 47 jobs in 49 years, lasting from 1 day to 25 years. But at the same time, I've been winner of the Employee of the Month Award for 306 months in a row since June 1984. Of course, it's easier when you're the only employee. Here an example of the 8 primary professions I've worked in initially in order to pay for my license, my background to become a licensed architect. I was a writer, a cartoonist, and a variety of other things. But since 1984, a full-time creative thinking consultant. And as it says here briefly, from 76 on, I've worked with companies that are in the top Fortune 100 to 10,000 to 20,000 to government agencies and so forth. Over 3,400 presentations of one type or another. Audiences ranging from 1, which was a little disappointing because it was an open lecture, to well over 1,000 people. Here are a few examples of clients that I work with, and what this represents are workshops or seminars, and in some cases, more in-depth consulting. But since 1998, I've been wandering around the world, which is my handle. I've got a few hundred people who actually follow my journals and follow my photographs around the world, which are available on my website. And my goal was to travel, but at the same time connect up with creative thinking people around the world, doing work with them, for them, trying to help them with their work while having a lot of fun traveling around the world. And many of the programs that I've gone to in the 73 countries and 8 trips completely around the world include the upper left there of Turkey, Korea, coming clockwise to the bottom corner, Taiwan, to the bottom left corner, South Africa, where I go every year. Alan, that's how I prefer to be called. Sometimes I'm referred to as a colorful white man named Black. After your uproarious laughter at that moment, I'll move on. My life's passion and purpose is this, to spread creating and creative thinking around the world, throughout entire workplaces, wherever I possibly can, or through the help of other people. So let's begin with today's presentation. We're going to deal with the whole box. I use the metaphor of crayons and the box of crayons quite often as an analogy to a workplace, in the fact that everyone inside the workplace has their own color or perhaps multiple colors. We're going to deal with just the basic structure of who, what, where, when, why, and how questions that I've used to structure this. Here are the 6 primary things that we're going to cover in the time that we have today. Which paradigm ought companies be considering and using or moving towards in the year 2015? What does it mean to break the box? Warming up for creativity. Are you creative yourself? An issue that is one of the reasons why many people are not as creative as they can be. Creative tools and techniques that I will give you a few examples, and then the concepts behind my primary work is to help spreading creative thinking throughout entire workplaces, as Mark reminded you, from the front door or back door to the top floor. So, Chapter 1, which paradigm for 2015? Breaking the box and warming up for creativity. Here are 4 paradigms in rather abstract words. In a normal workshop, I would have you spend anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes thinking about this, or perhaps in small groups of 3 to 5 people, discussing it until you chose one. Here are the 4 I generally ask. If it ain't broke, leave it alone. If it ain't broke, break it. Better fix it before it breaks. Keep using it until it breaks. And the answers will vary, but typically 2 out of the 4 are chosen by the greatest number of audiences in every country or profession that I work with. And here are the reasons why I support the 2 that are generally picked. Under A, if it ain't broke, leave it alone. Too often individuals, teams, companies, entire countries have lived by this. Unfortunately, it can lead to potential disaster in changing and highly competitive times like we're dealing with now. And this slide was written several years ago, initially, and now we have the global economic challenges of the last 6 months that have been coming for many years. But B, which is one of the 2 answers quite often chosen, if it ain't broke, break it, is more often referred to as the right brain or risk-taking type of approach, but it's one that many companies like McDonald's and so forth are using constantly, whether people are aware of or not. Continually sample, test, and check, exploring for new and better ways, not accepting that the ways you're doing it now, no matter how successful they are the only ways. C is another very strong response out of the 4. Better fix it before it breaks. Left brain thinking mostly. And that's predominantly what is called as preventative maintenance in industries around the world, to systematically control and prevent problems and potential dangers. Control is the primary factor. And the D, keep using it until it breaks, once again, like A, is too often used, and as it says here, you're asking for problems in changing and competitive times. What some companies do. This is based on my gathering of data, either by reading books, magazines, studies, or interviewing people from hundreds of companies that either I work with or they were in general audiences attending on their own. Here are a few logos from some of the companies I've worked with and a couple I still have on my wish list to possibly work with. What do they do? We seem to have lost a photograph here, so I'm going to back up a couple slides because the photograph, nope, sorry, I apologize for that, a little technical bloop. What some companies do, and I'm going to show you a list. Obviously my photograph hasn't come through, but it is following. Here's a sample list ranging from the left-hand column in blue, the percentage of profit paid to employees who generate ideas, down to the lower right, workshops on creative thinking or innovation or a variety of other related topics. There are, as it shows, there are many of these, but the thing I've discovered over 30 years of collecting examples, doing some of these, being the key speaker or one of the speakers for many of the items listed here, from a team group or department all the way up to entire companies, is the statement that overlaps on this slide. None do it systematically or throughout or for more than 18 months. I have seen example after example in many different industries of many companies that if I listed them, you'd go, oh, I know that company, I know them, they're great, and so forth, who have had innovation programs, who have had creativity programs, even some that have generated or saved millions of dollars. But the programs died because they didn't have a champion, or the VP changed and decided that that wasn't the mission that he or she had, and all of a sudden the creativity died for a while. This has been going on for at least the last 50 years. You can find early examples in the 50s when creativity was being exploded upon through the American Psychological Association on through business. Then in the 60s there was another explosion. 70s and the mid-80s there was a big explosion. Many business as well as public news magazines were talking about creativity in the workplace. and now into the 2009 and beyond, innovation is proudly found on almost every letterhead in the world. The challenge is, are they really doing it? My striving goal is to help people develop creating communities from the front door, as my slogan says. The goal is that we have tremendous numbers of people who have much more creativity that is unused, untapped, undeveloped. And it doesn't take as much as most people think. And here's my general approach. I use this acronym of SPREAD to help people remember 6 basic clusters or categories of things that we can do as supervisors, managers, leaders, owners of companies, or simply fellow employees. We need to support it in many different ways, and most of the companies I've looked at did in some way, but it wasn't clear were they truly supporting it or not, or they only supported it for a short time. Other ones did a lot of promoting. I remember posters. I remember those wonderful carpets with catchy slogans on at the entrances to factories and offices. And emails, newsletters, all kinds of media used to promote it. But once again, it usually was only for a short period of time. We need to recognize it, and one that I've added to this is reward it. There's a lot of research that claims that rewards are not what highly creative people want. No, I'm focused on everyday people, including the highly creative people, the people that will buck any system there is and will be creative no matter what you do to them. We all want rewards of some type. It may not be money, it may not be time, it could be many other things, but the key is people want recognition to some degree, and they do want rewards, at least occasionally, to help them during the ups and downs of their creativeness. The other area that we can, as supervisors, managers, leaders, is to encourage, from simple little pats on the back to memos to personal letters home to mentions in newsletters, in annual reports, and so forth. We can then go on to applying it from the front door to the top floor. Just have that secretary, have that warehouse manager, have that trucker, so forth, be encouraged, be supported, and promoted in the idea that it's fine to do their job more creatively. And one question I ask my audience is the following: who really knows the job best? And if the answer isn't the people that do the job, something's wrong in the management system. We need to be bringing out the creativity as well as encouraging it and developing it, which is the last category. And listening to this webinar is one of the ways you're doing that. All right, the next area of subject is warm-up. One of the lessons I learned from my master teacher, a man named E. Paul